Welcome to Stoughton Media Access Cable Station. My name is Steve Kelley, and today I'll be a host. I have the pleasure of bringing you a number of individuals, town personnel, as well as people that represent private interests that are here to share with you the new Stoughton Fire Department infrastructure plan. So let's start right in with Robin Grimm, who's the town manager, and Robin will just bump us into just an overview right away. So go ahead, Robin.
So several years ago, or for many years, the town has known that it has needed a new fire station. And Station 1 is 100 years old. And when I first came to town and took a tour of it, I absolutely understood why we needed a new fire station for a whole host of reasons that you'll hear about as we go on in this presentation today. At that time, the town was looking at the possibility of a public safety building, a combined entity, and a public safety committee was put together right around the time that I came. And we did bring on Pomeroy as a project manager, and eventually, as you see, and you will meet our architect team. And that process went on for a few years. We got some program information, and we started it up, but it didn't come to where we needed it to get to something concrete. And I'll let Chairman Mokrisky give more information on sort of the direction that he took that as we go. But generally, we at some point ended up putting together a staff team. And what you'll see here today, and what people will see here today, is basically the outcome of that. And one of the things that we found is new construction is extremely expensive, and a large fire station that would house headquarters and all the things we needed it to house was going to cost a lot of money. And we were trying to look for creative options. And I think what you'll see here today in the plan are some pretty creative options. And ultimately, what came out of that primarily is that we'll build a new fire station, an operating fire station. We're also going to be able to save and utilize well a beautiful historic building that we have in town.
Okay, and Joe, if you could step in and, as a lover of fire trucks, and most in the community know that about you, maybe you could just bring us a little historical background and then carry off of Robin's message to how we're going to save the Freeman Street building, how we're going to reutilize the building over in Central, and how we're going to start up with a new one.
Great. No, thank you very much, Steve, and I appreciate you and Roy, asking us to be here and to talk a little bit about this. The town manager is 100% right, and we've been talking about the need for a fire station, into the early 90s. We knew we needed a station. It was magnified in 1994 following the death of firefighter Victor Melendi, and we talked more about it. And we talked about, how important and how critical a state-of-the-art fire station is for the men and women that serve in our fire department. Prior to my being reelected to the board in 2019, just before that, we had a committee that was established to look at a combined facility of police and fire. And I was never really keen of that because I think it was too much at the time following the vote of the high school, which was an override to the taxes. And I know there is a need, and we understand and have not lost track that there is a need for a renovation, to the police department as well, that is going to be needed in the next few years. We're well aware of it, and we won't forget it. I mean, it's a part of our infrastructure. If we don't have great schools and public safety and services to our residents, why are we all doing this? And I think that we've tried to address that and to move forward in a responsible manner, keeping in mind that we all pay the same taxes and there's no bottomless pit of money. We've got to think of innovative ways to try to meet the needs of the future of our public safety and of all of our town services, while remembering that the Stoughton taxpayers and us as well. I'm a resident as well and pay the same taxes. Is to do it in a responsible manner. We had this committee established was really looking at a big picture. I mean, a real big picture, to the tune of just the conversations. There were numbers of $55, $60 million being talked about. And it was, on looking at property that basically was pretty tough for us to attain the control over. This was property that was and taken in the 60s by eminent domain for the purposes of a school. And the school department was hesitant to, and they would have to allow us to use that property. And the process to do that without the authorization of the schools would be lawsuits. And to me, it doesn't make any sense for the select board of the town of Stoughton to sue our school committee, for using land for its intended purpose. It doesn't make sense. It was broached back in the 90s when we did a remodeling and some additional buildings at the DPW, because they were working out of basically wooden shacks in some areas, and there were some new buildings put up. But there was at one point a plan to put it on the same site that was being proposed for a possible school for the original purpose, and where the people were talking about this proposed public safety building. And it didn't happen then. And we were basically told then you can't do it, because if you're going to use that land, you would have to offer it back to the person for what it was taken, who it was taken from, for its intended purpose. So we didn't use it for a school. We have to offer it back to the people that it was taken from at a dollar amount. And it would not have been, an inexpensive amount of money. So we spent a lot of time talking about that. We spent a lot of time talking about, different plans and so forth. And to the credit, and I don't think the name's important, but to the credit of one of the people that are here today, representing the town, when I asked the simple question, are the taxpayers of Stoughton getting the return on their investment for this process? And I was told no. Well, that spoke volumes to me. And talking with my peers on the board, it was obvious that we needed to start to consider a different option. And I want to say this up front, that I don't second guess, and I don't think that anybody was doing anything wrong. But the previous committee was just, I think, looking too big. And the conversation took, 2 years to get where we were, and we were no better off than where we were when we started. And we basically, consumed about $300,000, I believe about $270,000 of the taxpayers' money, talking with nothing to show for it. And when we got right down to the end, and again, I'm not trying to disparage the work of the previous committee. That's not the case. But, it just comes down to a philosophy of thinking, is that, again, we've got to be looking out for our taxpayers. We need to build for the future. But I think, sometimes we have to show a little bit of restraint and say that we understand what it's like. Property taxes are going up. Everything's going up. Let's see what we can do to be innovative and think outside the box, which I didn't feel we were doing. And again, not because people were trying to do anything intentionally, it wasn't being done. So with my colleagues on the board, we decided to stop the process and to reshift attention to turning to the people that work for us that know this stuff better than us. I come from transportation. I'm not an engineer, but we have an engineer that works for the taxpayers. We have talented talented fire chief and assistant chief that have been on this committee. Why aren't we listening to the firefighters? Why aren't we listening to the town staff? So with that, the board, after some consideration, we decided to shift the direction and to let the people that we employ on behalf of the residents of Stoughton to take a crack at it. You work with the consultants. Let's make sure that no personal agendas are in here. Let's build a fire station that meets the needs of the people of Stoughton and our firefighters to do the best job they can do. And let's see what we can do to trim it down. Let's build a station that's affordable, that makes sense. It's not an impact on the area, meets the needs of the fire department on response time. And in a short 3 months, and I shouldn't say I'm proud to say it was our staff, but as a member of the select board, Steve, in the leadership role, you understand it's our job to empower our employees.
Well, Joe, let me interrupt you, Joe, and take that as a transition point. Jackson, why don't you step in and tell us a little bit about how you've inputted the process from the firefighter side of things?
Thank you, Mr. Kelley. And on behalf of Chief Carroll and the firefighters of Stoughton Fire Department, we'd like to thank all the residents that for the last 3 years put countless time and effort and hours into working to where we are today. We wouldn't be here and we wouldn't have come up with this plan without the much input that went on from 2018 to where we stand today. And for that, we're forever grateful for everyone that participated in this. And thank you again for having us as part of this forum. We're truly honored to be here. The lessons learned that we took up to this point was that not only from the citizen side, but from us, our mandate as a fire service and emergency response service is to protect the lives and property of the residents in town. Now, how do we do that best? And that's through emergency response. And whenever we can refine our emergency response times and array our infrastructure, our fire stations, in a configuration to where we can get from point A to point B to protect and save the lives of the personnel and residents of the town of Stoughton. That's what our mandate is, and that's what drives our focus. So emergency response times are critical. And for the last 3 years, our feeling is that they've had it right from an emergency response standpoint in putting a new emergency response station in the area of Park Street. We've always been on board with that, and we felt that would provide the best emergency response service, and it would work in tandem and complement Station 2. Now, how did we feel could the new Station 1 on Park Street complement Station 2, which is in the northwest part of Stoughton? It would be by making Station 2 on 5050 Central Street fully operational and moving administration out of Station 2 so we could put an engine and an ambulance at 5050 Central Street.
That's great. Now, your input, I want to sort of suggest too, how did you input with the architect and as they design? You're talking about 1550, making it, fully operational. So you had to bring in design people. I think Taylor and Rick have something to do with that. Maybe one of those could input. One of you guys?
Go ahead, Jackson. Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to stay real quick before Rick and Glenn take over for me. We did have deep discussions into how we can make it, and we do not have to make any structural changes to Station 2 at 1550 Central Street. It will be minimal cost. We're talking about essentially taking the office space that administration uses right now and converting that into operational space for the additional personnel that would work out of 1550 Central Street. So there'll be no structural changes. We'll be able to use the existing footprint and operational space at very minimal cost.
Excellent.
And Glenn, feel free to chime in on how we do that.
Yeah, thanks, Assistant Chief, and thanks, Mr. Kelley and company. It's nice to be here with you guys. Yeah, the plans are basically, and I think Joe, you would appreciate it, it's really light duty tenant fit out, drywall partitions, moving some ceiling grid tiles around and some light switches, negligible work. I think the other piece of that station puzzle is, and we looked at it with our consulting engineer, is the mechanical systems. I know they're adequate and you guys hobble along as it is, but we've got an order of magnitude cost for that work as well, if it should ever want to be pursued. But to your point, it's a quite straightforward, simple process to convert the chief's office and some of the other administrative spaces to, additional bunk rooms or staff support space.
So Rick, would you jump in and kind of add to that conversation? Because I know you're also working from that side of things.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Steve and Roy, for having us. My name is Rick Pomeroy, and I'm with Pomeroy Associates. My partner, Taylor McDonald, and I are representing the town as the owner's project manager. And I wanted to make sure that we introduced Glenn Gallrad. Glenn works with Dora and Witter Architects, and they've been charged and been involved with this project since we first formed several years ago. And they've reviewed not only Station 2, but Station 1 in the preparations for the renovations. And they've been instrumental and involved with the response time study, all of the solutions that we've looked at over the last couple of years, and in particular, the design at 400 Prospect Street. So we can't wait to get into those components. To talk a little bit about the infrastructure plan, things have to happen one after another. In other words, the 400 Prospect has to occur first to enable us to renovate Freeman Street, then to enable us to move admin out of Station number 2 and do those minor modifications there. So it's a.
Rick, let me interrupt you and just call on Roy. I'm going to interrupt Roy. Can you get us some pictures of the 400 Prospect Station up on board? So we can have Rick and Taylor perhaps talk a little bit about it. And I also want to ask a question as you answer, as you tell us about it, how would this 400 Prospect Station be built differently 50 years ago than it will be now? So maybe Roy, if you can get us up with the pictures.
Boy, oh boy, we could talk all day about that. Glenn, well, I'm going to give you the highlight version of it. When Station number 1 was originally built, there was not ADA requirements for handicapped accessibility. Most fire departments in that era did not have female firefighters. And that's a big component of every modern day fire department. And having the separation requirements and the separate quarters available for both male and female is very important. The facilities, and Glenn will talk when we do the layout for 400 Prospect, we'll talk about the importance of controlling the contamination aspects, the decontamination of the equipment and the firefighters, and making sure that contamination does not spread from what we call hot zones and cold zones. Those are the big picture items, the changes that have been made. The apparatus is, in some cases, almost twice the size as to what was originally utilized back in 1926. And I think Joe will probably talk about that a little bit. He's a lover of those antiques. But the apparatus size, you see in these stations, if you have the opportunity, we're having an open house on Saturday. If you can see how the apparatus don't fit in the existing facility and do not allow the firefighters easy access around the equipment, safe access around the equipment is very important. As Deputy Chief had indicated, that response time, it's all about response time. Response time is not only measured when you leave the facility, but how safely and how quickly can you get to the apparatus and the equipment when a call occurs and you're inside the facility. And so having that circulation space is key and important.
So Rick and Jackson, if I could ask too, on behalf of Stoughton residents, can the kids come to this open house? I mean, I remember as a kid going to the fire station and climbing up on top of that fire truck. That was the most unbelievable experience. It just was amazing. So what about something like that?
Absolutely, Steve. This Saturday, we kick off our Fire Prevention Month, and we will have static displays. We'll have members that are here that are on this show right now today that'll be there. There'll be pamphlets, handouts, and we'll have a rolling presentation that will show the rendering of this full infrastructure concept. And the residents will be able to come in throughout the station, throughout the day. This is from 10 to 2 in the afternoon on Saturday, here, October 9th. And we are happy to host any of our residents that like to come outside of that. But we do have an open house this Saturday, and we will not only be speaking about fire prevention, which we're all passionate about. Fire prevention saves lives, stop it before it happens. But we will also segueing into our infrastructure plan for this upcoming facility, and that is this Saturday at
Okay, and
Station
is that
1 at
at-
30 Freeman
at-
Street.
The Freeman Street Station. Okay, right.
Yes,
Very good. I'm going to bring my grandson, by the way. I think he just loves the
you'll
fire.
love it. You'll love it.
Yeah.
We'd love to have them.
And Rick, can you just hit one more time for me? I'd like, whenever I do a show, I like people to come away with something more than just sort of the program. Hot and cold zones. Can you teach us something so we can add that into our suitcases, please?
Sure. And Glenn, please, and Taylor, please jump in when I miss something, because this is an extremely important topic. The fires today, when a fire occurs, whether it's in a residential home or a commercial building, there are so many plastics and foreign materials used in the buildings today. The smoke itself has contaminants in it. And those contaminants are on the firefighter gear and on the firefighters, and they're on the apparatus. And it's very important on how that is treated. And in years past, a firefighter, many years past, would come back to a station and go right into the day room and plop down, and they would congratulate one another on how well they fought that fire, bringing all the contaminants into their living quarters. Well, that's in this day and age with state-of-the-art fire facilities, that is not something that is regularly done. So when a firefighter returns to the station in the state-of-the-art facility, if necessary and if it's warranted from the event, they go through decontamination. Their equipment is shed in so when they come back to the facility, they're in a hot zone, and ultimately they want to get into a cold zone, being a safe area, meaning their living quarters. So they come back to the facility and they will shed all of their gear in the decontamination room. All of the gear, and if necessary, the firefighter will be completely, there'll be a shower unit in there, and heavy duty commercial industrial washing machines and dryers for all of the gear are included in there. So they go through the process of the decontamination. When they leave the decontamination, they go into a neutral or cold zone where they're safe to go to the day areas and live. And this is, there's been many studies performed, and the city of Boston has, and all of the states and cities and towns across the country have spent an exorbitant amount of time and resources studying this and what is the best way to protect the firefighter. Because the bottom line is they're protecting the community and the taxpayers. So this facility is designed in such a way, and I don't know if we want to walk through that. Like I said, this is extremely important. Glenn, if you want to pull up the floor plan, and we can walk you through it quickly, and so you can see that the passage and how the firefighter returns to the facility in a safe way.
Can I add something to that too, Rick?
Yeah.
And also, Mr. Kelley, this is a full building plan or scenario, really, how decon happens. So it's not even just the routes that they're walking, but the HVAC system is separated into those areas so that there's no crossage of air from your hot zones into your neutral zones and your clean zones. So the building is segmented in such a way that all these spaces stay separate from the clean zones of the building.
Wow, it's very complicated when you're adding HVAC, not only to the space. What about washing the actual equipment? Is that done inside or outside or
it's done in the contamination suite. There are heavy duty washers and gear dryers. So everything, all of the decontamination process occurs in the decontamination suite, so that nothing leaves the apparatus floor or the decon area until it's safe.
Yeah, this is a space that wouldn't have even been designed into a station back when they first built Freeman Street. So not only has apparatus gotten bigger and firefighting changed, but these clean spaces are just now starting to really get into all new fire stations as they're built. So
I want to just shift a little tiny bit to someone to answer for me. One of the most important things in any business is communications. How are communications being affected by your infrastructure plan or by the way you're designing buildings? And anyone can step in on that one. It's a tough.
Oh,
Yeah, from an operational perspective, Jackson, you want to?
yes, sure. We existing our stations, we do have station to station communication via 4 systems. We have a web-based systems through our computers, our telephone systems. We also have a direct line communication from station to station and also to our centralized dispatch at Rose Street. And there are 8 of those devices, 4 on each floor in both stations. And we also have our direct radio stations. When we build this new infrastructure plan, we won't have 4 different, it will be far more streamlined, and we will have a more modern interactive system to where the stations are able to interact one another. I don't know. I do know that. Go ahead, Taylor.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was
Not
just
at all. Not at all.
raising my hand for after, but during the early design process, what we will probably do, Mr. Kelley, is bring on a radio consultant and go through an actual propagation study. And what that means is they study how the towers are interacting with the radios that the fire department's using, ways that they can overcome dead areas. They look at ways to, increase their bandwidth in town. So that's done early on, and we sit down and go through that and, talk about phones, talk about all the IT and AV components that go into these buildings. They're very technical, and the coordination on those becomes very integrated. It needs to be for the station to work. So it builds on what they have now in an effort to make it better after both stations are built.
Good. Jackson, I'm going to direct you to a different question. There's some in our audience, I'm sure, who don't realize that you guys get to turn the buttons red and green on the lights, right? When you're called. Would you explain that so that people can know why is it that you're slipping through the lights are changing?
Oh, absolutely. Happy to answer that. We have infrastructure, and we work with our DPW and our state partners with the state's Department of Public Works and DOT, and they install at our major intersections throughout the town what's called an Opticon system. And they are directly mounted to all the lights in the major intersections in town, Washington and Central, right in the center of town where Freeman Street comes up. So once either the fire apparatus, our ambulance, or the police cruisers, their lighting systems goes off, that automatically sends a signal to the Opticon system so that it provides traffic flow for the emergency response apparatus or police cruisers to get through these busy intersections, and it holds up the traffic. So we don't actually flip a switch in our vehicles. There's an actual device that's mounted on the top of all of the stoplights at our major intersections. So it's all done internally.
So this is all great infrastructure stuff. I like it. Robin, I want to come over to you and talk a little bit about what is the town going to do for like recruitment, and how do you ensure that we're going to have firefighters in the future? So that's part of, to me, the whole. Let's talk about the infrastructure of all of the fire departments. It's personnel, it's communication, it's equipment, it's land purchase, it's all, architecture, great design, all the things that you're doing.
Well, this is absolutely an important part for recruitment. I mean, when we take, potential firefighters, as you know, we're part of civil service, which means that we have a list that we are competing with other towns to have firefighters come. And to be honest, if you walk through Station 1 and you are a potentially young firefighter and you see our Station 1 right now, and you go to some neighboring towns and you see their stations, you may not feel that this town is truly committed to its firefighters, which is not true. We are, but the station doesn't reflect that. And even the way our headquarters is set up, Station 2 was really designed to have a second ambulance, not be taken up with headquarters and administrative space. That needs to be more of a fire operational building as well. So right now, what we have, doesn't excite people to come to Stoughton. I think this will. And on another note, ironically, I just ran into the head of the labor union for the firefighters, and I happened to be meeting with the new school superintendent, and they started talking because our firefighters are looking to work on an internship program within the high schools to try to bring along our own Stoughton kids. And this just this morning, I learned of this, ironically, in my office. And so these are the
Breaking
things-
news. I love this.
Yeah, breaking news. So first officially announced, even though I probably am not supposed to officially announce it, but that's okay. We tell everybody everything. And so, I mean, that's exciting. If we can start recruiting local kids and these young people who might be at this open house or in the next few years, watch the progress that's going on with these two buildings coming online. I think it's really exciting. If I could just back up for 1 second and talk a little bit about the two design concept, if that's okay. If you all don't mind, if I sort of back up to that, because it goes sort of with what we're talking about. Part of it's recruitment for firefighters, but also part of it is exciting people about coming into this town. Part of exciting people about living in Stoughton and moving to Stoughton and young families coming to Stoughton. First, young families, response time, how our stations are distributed, where people live in proximity to stations is very important to people. That is always important to people when they're shopping for homes. But secondly, our downtown is a critical part of our community. And as you know, we're working very hard on downtown redevelopment. You've interviewed me before on how important I think that is and how excited I am about this. This project actually assists with that too. This really dovetails beautifully with what we're trying to do downtown. We're saving a beautiful historic building that right now is not functional in the way that it should be. And what
Freeman Street, right? You're talking about
Freeman
Freeman?
Street. Yeah,
Freeman.
Freeman Street. And so I think what's important is how this happened. So as Chairman Mokrisky pointed out, things weren't going anywhere. We weren't getting anywhere. When we first started to sit down with the internal staff team that we pulled together, when we're bantering ideas around, one of the things that came up, of course, was cost. And I'm the meanie about that. Rick and Taylor are going to laugh because every time I threw a number at them, they're like, oh, we can't do it for that. But they did. And but cost of new construction is extraordinarily expensive compared to certain types of renovation. Now, renovating Freeman Street to be used as a new fire station, given what we just heard about the needs of hot zones, cold zones, would have been extraordinarily expensive. Renovating Freeman Street to office space, emergency operations center, public health areas is very affordable and less expensive than the square footage we would need for new construction to house a fire headquarters in that new station. The other issue were space requirements for available properties. We went out to bid a few times for appropriate properties. Had we put the headquarters over there and a community room or a training room, we would have needed far more parking, a much larger footprint building. So we would have had increased construction costs. If we could have found a piece of property to hold that in a proper location, the property would have been significantly more expensive. So the beauty of this is it generated from ideas bantering around a room. I think it was actually Mark Tisdale who originally threw out, well, what can we use Freeman Street for? And what happened is now we found a way, we shaved the price $4 or $5 million on what the original design was for what a new station would be housing all of those things. And instead we're saving a historic building, taking something that in downtown center will be restored, hopefully back to its old facade, the original facade, getting what we don't have right now, which is a true emergency operations center. And why that's important is right now we have a fire headquarters and I can go sit in the chief's office with 2 or 3 people if we have an incident going on. But we don't truly have an emergency operations center right now that efficiently allows for the police chief, the fire chief, the select board chair, the school superintendent. God forbid we have a disaster at the high school. When Freeman Street is developed, we will all be centrally located where we can all get to that location quickly and operate a true emergency operation from that center. We're a big enough town to need that. We're an active, busy, large town. Hurricanes, God forbid school shootings, things we read about on the news all the time, and a massive fire. We would be equipped for that. And again, at a very reasonable cost. Also included in that would be area that could be a good community room. It will serve as a training room. And now when our firefighters train, and this is something the fire chiefs, you talked about what did the fire chiefs input into this discussion. One of the really important things that came from the fire department is right now when they run training, they have to bring everybody here and that depletes both sides of town effectively. Now, excuse me, one side of town, they go to one side or the other. Now we will have a central location where firefighters come in for training. They'll all be in the center of town and can operate equally to both sides of town. And they'll have a modern facility in which to train. Additionally, we're gaining a public health area. And this becomes very important right now with COVID. We are moving our public health, which is under Janice Bruce, over into this new station. And in doing that, if we need testing sites, if we need vaccination sites, this building will also be able to serve as that right in the heart of our downtown. And anything that brings people downtown, makes our downtown more beautiful, and actually is functional, is wonderful. And I'm always a fan of municipal campuses where your staff and your teams are very close. We're all within walking distance. So you can park and walk. And then the other component of this is fire prevention. So a lot of the public has to use the fire prevention component if they need permitting, all of those things, new buildings, new businesses coming in. Right now, people have to run over to Station 2. The parking is not ideal. They're in and out of the way of vehicles coming in and out. People who need permitting or something from fire prevention, that public interaction, will now come downtown. And again, we're bringing day foot traffic downtown and adding parking to that component. So I think it's important to look at all of those things. And when we go back to your original question of recruitment, having a beautiful fire headquarters for new recruits to come to, having a new station that's beautiful, operational, and having Station 2 with proper dormitory space and staff now with an ambulance as it was originally supposed to be staffed, really makes us a much more desirable department, I think, for a young recruit. So, and I also want to emphasize there is going to be a historic component to this building, and Mr. Mokrisky could talk more about that, as you mentioned the old fire truck. So we're also going to celebrate the history of Stoughton in this building by looking to have fire memorabilia, and the antique truck is part of this.
Well, Robin, that's great. I think the whole group is doing fabulous educating, which is what was my hope in joining this group. Before I go to Joe Mokrisky to ask him more, something that everybody unfortunately gets to do is to participate with an ambulance for some reason or another. So I'm hoping, Jackson, if you could, is let people know, what does it cost them? What everybody has a million questions when they have to call the ambulance. And I think it would be great to let the public have a little better knowledge about ambulances if you could.
Yes, absolutely, Steve. This infrastructure plan, what we're excited about is it's gonna substantially reduce our response time for our ambulance. Right now, we have both of our ambulance. We run 2 ambulances now. The town fully committed to that several years ago, and we couldn't be more thankful, and it serves the residents well. In this infrastructure plan, we will be able to have an ambulance station on the northwestern side of Stoughton at 1550 Central Street, and the southeastern side, which really serves both sides of the town well, and it reduces our response times for that ambulance substantially. None of us want to ever have to call the ambulance, but if we do have to call them, seconds seem like minutes, and minutes, well, they seem like hours. But with this new infrastructure plan, those seconds will be for the most part, for the overwhelming majority of the community, except the outlying parts, will be within several minutes. They'll be getting an ambulance as long as it's in service and not already at a call or at the hospital.
Okay, thank you. So, question on behalf of the residents, I think, who pays for the ambulance when you call the ambulance? When it comes, does your insurance company get billed? What happens if you're
The insurance company gets
like
billed.
that?
Yes, the insurance company or Medicare gets billed.
Okay,
That's
so
how
that
the
they don't
process
have
goes.
to, people don't have to, like, I can't call the ambulance, I don't have the money. They don't have
They
to.
absolutely should not do that. And if we, they should never do that, Steve. They should always call us. We're here to serve the community. Worry about that later. And if there's any extreme hardships, we're there to serve the people there. We're here for a reason. We're public servants. And if you need the ambulance, they should never, their first thought should never be, oh, am I going to have to pay for this? It should be like, oh, I hope they get here as fast as they can, and they can get hospital to either protect my loved one or save their life.
Well spoken, very good. So Joe, I want to pull you back in. The idea of locating a facility in the center of town, liven it up a little. You've been a big advocate of changing this center, and I think you've got some real progress going with the Board of Selectmen. Talk to us a little bit about that. I'm not hearing Joe. Are you muted?
I'm sorry, somehow I muted myself.
Okay.
And believe me, there are a lot of people saying, I wish you stay muted, but let's move on. You're right. And this goes back to 1994, right after I was elected. And if you remember keenly, we made some changes in the traffic plan there over by the old Bay Bank. And we did some plantings. We got some trees growing. We did some benches. And, although we couldn't afford to do a lot, we do something. And we continue. We've made some great steps here. We have a new zoning that'll come forward. We're moving forward in a lot of areas, and we've done that by working together as a team. Every member of this board is equal. I've basically said to people that as chair, I'm kind of diminishing the power of the chair, because I don't believe that I, as chair, have any more power than any one of the other 4 members of the select board. And we're proud to be working with the staff. I cannot, and I can speak on behalf of my colleagues when we all say that we're proud of the staff and what they've done in this job, working hand in hand with the developers to bring something that's innovative. I mean, we're meeting some of our needs with existing infrastructure while also reducing the cost of new construction, which is more. So, when we talk about financing later on in this process, we're going to show the residents that we've taken a responsible step in accomplishing this, so that we take value. I mean, I'm lucky and honored to be a member of the select board. When it's all said, Steve, I'm just a Stoughton resident trying to make a difference for my community. And on behalf of the taxpayers and the people that put me here to serve as their voice, like my 4 colleagues, this is a project that doesn't come along often, that when you can say to the residents that you serve and are going to pay the bill, listen, we went outside the box. We brought in people that were better than us. We listened to the facts. We come up with something that serves you better. And always we have to remember, it comes down to serving our public safety, giving them the best place to work in that's state of the art and meets the needs of the fire, the fire business. We'll say, the firefighting services. I don't think that there's a station around, in our area that is in the condition that our station is in. And you nailed it. When the station was built in 1926, the fire truck that I was able to save and keep in the town was brought in 2 years later. I mean, and that's if anybody's seen the fire truck, this is, it was made to serve a little truck. And there's several pictures we'll bring up in the future. I happened to see a town meeting representative at the Kids Day that we had at Faxon Park a couple of weeks ago. And he was overlooking at the fire truck, and he happened to bring up the fire station. And it just popped into my head. I said, well, with all due respect to everybody, I said, that fire station was built to house this truck. And I turned around and I pointed to the ladder truck that had the ladder 100 feet in the air with a flag flying off of it. I said, and it's housing those trucks. I said, and think of the facility. When you think of the difference in the trucks, think of the facility inside that's lacking a proper environment for our firefighters to do their job. Decontamination, workshops, sleeping arrangements, living quarters. I mean, there are people that could come back to life from 1928 and walk through it and say, geez, hasn't changed much. That's not a good thing.
I like the walkthrough idea. So, Robin, I want you to walk through for us, not necessarily as far back as Joe's talking about, but could you chronologize for us, walk us through the steps now? You said that we need to get 400 Prospect first. So take us from where you are now to how you're going to go through and integrate or pull in with you a little bit about the funding that has to go through town meeting. So please run that for us.
So a first big step for that happened this past Tuesday. The board made a decision on how we would put it into the town meeting warrant to borrow for this project. And the board voted to do a 65% debt exclusion and 35% on the levy. The thought behind this was that within our budget, and I had just done a 3-year budget projection for the board literally minutes prior, that we can withstand a little more debt in our debt service line item without losing other services in the town, without hurting the town, and still being able to maintain a good functioning town.
All right, Robin, let me interrupt you because you spoke very quickly for people with smaller minds such as mine. You quickly went through and for the levy. Repeat that section and tell us what it means.
Okay, so when we have a line item for debt service, so it's like paying our bills back, What, when we borrow money, we have to pay back. And so
Okay.
it's like your mortgage payment or your home equity line, for example.
Okay,
And if we borrowed the whole thing on the town and put it all on that home equity line, if you will, or let's call it a town equity line.
Yep.
It would add over $1 million onto what I would have to find to propose to the board for my annual budget. For
okay,
me to find that kind of money would jeopardize other line items within our budget. And
Right.
we have a very tight budget. There's not a lot of wiggle room. We were very tight with COVID. We didn't increase much. Finding $1 million, I indicated to the board, would be very challenging. So I had Sue Herman, my internal auditor, run a series of numbers. And I know the board, some members of the board, there was debate back and forth on whether 100% of it should be debt exclusion, which is like the high school, as people know it, or whether there could be a middle ground. And the board voted for a middle ground of 65% debt exclusion, which means the taxpayers will see that on their bill. And then 35% on the town, which means approximately 350,000 added to my equity line that we have to budget for. The cost per average household, if the average household is approximately valued at $450,000, the cost per year for this fire station project, both buildings, will be about $60, $60 to $63. We went a little on the high side on our budgeting to be ultra conservative.
per year,
Per year.
not
So
per
it's
month, per
Nope.
year.
approximately
$12,
yep.
$5.50 per week, per month,
Yep,
something like that.
$5 a month. We were looking at it quarterly, and really, I think we felt if we could stay anywhere between 20 and 25 a quarter, we were trying to be reasonable for the taxpayer. And this actually comes in even less than that. And so that was this Tuesday. Now what happens is it'll go in the warrant book. Town meeting has to vote it, and hopefully we'll support that. In the meantime, prior to that, we will do shows like this. We will have a town hall meeting. I will do the regular Zoom informational meetings that I do, where town meeting reps can pop on and ask questions. Things like the public safety, the fire safety open house. My office is always open Thursday afternoons at 4:30. People can come by and ask me questions. We are all available to answer questions, because I think for the town meeting reps, in all fairness, they need full education on this if they're going to support it, rightfully so. If it passes town meeting, it then has to go to a special referendum election. So there would be an election late January, early February. We will move as quickly as possible because interest rates are optimal right now. And we are beginning to see traces of them ticking up. We estimated a 3% interest rate, which is higher than current rates. Current rates are dramatically lower than that, but we wanted to give wiggle room in case they are up by the time we go out for a bond on this. That was recommended. That number was recommended by our bond counsel. So we had some outside professional advice. Sue Herman discussed that with bond counsel. So we would have a referendum in late January, February, and as soon as we possibly can, we will go out for the borrowing on that and start construction absolutely as quickly as possible. We want to catch, again, those optimal interest rates on the borrowing.
Okay, so the first station would be step one, assuming that you could get the finances in order. The town is agreeing that this is a great project. And then from step one of 400 Prospect, would simultaneously another project be started, or would you finish that, say, 2 years from then, and then go to the Freeman Street? And then what about the 1550? So I want to kind of understand better the sequence and the how it comes together, if you could help.
Sure, Steve. Either myself or Rick would be happy to speak about that.
Go ahead. Please, go ahead.
I can start off, Rick.
Oh, go ahead.
But I mean, the construction arm of this community will most certainly be able to get into the weeds better than I can. But Steve, as it stands right now, we will continue to provide emergency response services and fire administration services like fire prevention, emergency medical services staffing, and our other administrative services as we are currently constituted out of 1550 Central Street and 30 Freeman Street, as 400 Prospect Street is being built. Once 400 Prospect Street is completed and built, all operations would move out of 30 Freeman Street and into the new facility at the new proposed Fire Station 1 at 400 Prospect Street. So 30 Freeman Street would be emptied, and our contractors would come in there again and convert that into a fire administration, public health, and emergency operations center for the town. Once that's complete, our fire administrations would move out of 1550 Central Street and into 30 Freeman Street, along with the public health office in the emergency operations center component for our community. And then the final renovations, which will be minimal in comparison to the first two projects, will be completed here at 1550 Central Street to make this station fully operational for an engine and an ambulance. And that is the sequence. Build Fire Station 1 at 400 Prospect Street. We continue to operate as we do now. Once that's complete, personnel move out of 30 Freeman Street into the new fire station. Once that renovation's done, the fire administration moves to 30 Freeman Street, and then we complete the renovations to make it fully operational for emergency response at 1550 Central Street. Rick?
Yeah, if you'd like, I can put some times to that. It may be a little helpful. After we're approved to proceed, in other words, after it's affirmed at the ballot, we would have approximately 11 to 12 months of design and bidding. The bidding duration itself is a couple months long with all of the different requirements for Chapter 149. And then we're estimating about 16 months for construction with all of the fit out and so on and so forth. When we get towards the end of station number 1 at 400 Prospect, we will begin the bidding for the emergency for Freeman Street. And we're estimating Freeman Street. So there'll be an overlap there for the design and the bidding component. So, and we're looking at about 10 months to 12 months for the completion of Freeman Street. And we'll do the same with station number 2. We may look at in-house possibilities to complete some of that work, but we're going to have the same overlap. So the end project will go well into 2025. But it's it's like making a watch. Everything has to be put together just right for it to be successful.
Well, I'm impressed with everybody's presentation and knowledge and ability, and I hope it comes together like a watch. And I wanted to give Joe Mokrisky, unless Robin, did you want to have a final word before I give Joe the final word?
I'll give quick and then we'll let Chairman Mokrisky. I just want to jump in and quickly give a thank you to my staff team and actually thank Chairman Mokrisky and the board for putting this into the hands of my staff. Mark Tisdale, Paul Jaffoon, Sue Herman, Chief Carroll, Chief Maycomber, Mark Tisdale, Craig Horsfeld. It's just a phenomenal internal team that has done just great work. And in a matter of 2.5 months with, Chairman Mokrisky and the board giving us free reign and open ideas and not restricting us. Just one of the best teams I've ever had the pleasure of being on to see ideas generated and tossed around. And I really want to thank the board because I think what's so important in this, the board had healthy discussion the other night. There were debates on how the financing should work and whatnot, but in the end, that board voted 5-0 to support this. And that's so important. And that's so important for me as the town manager to know that we have the support of the board as we go forward. The teamwork that the board is showing really selfishly makes my life a whole lot easier. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank every member of that board for their dedication and Chairman Mokrisky for giving us the opportunity to really highlight the talents of the people on my team.
Thank you, Robin. And Joe, give us something for sort of a closeout final. I will first just say thank you to the audience. Thank you to all of the panel members. You've been great. Thank you to Roy Cohen. Thank you to Stoughton Media Access Cable and their board for making these shows possible. So Joe, close us out, if you would, with final thoughts from a job well done by the selectmen, yourself, and the rest of the town team.
Thank you, and I'll make it fast. I've been on the select board finishing out 18 years. This is the best process I've ever gone through in all of my involvement in the different projects. And the people that are on this call today should be applauded. As a chair of the board, and I know I speak for my colleagues on the board, this has been a process that really meets the best interest of the community, the needs of the taxpayers, our employees, and our town as a whole. This is a great process. It's outside the box thinking, it's new ideas, and it's something that we can do, and it's affordable. So my thanks to everybody involved. It has been a pleasure to represent the taxpayers with my colleagues during this process.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to our viewers and to our panel. And let's all get out on October 9th, get over to that fire station. Bring your children, bring your grandchildren, jump up
Please
on those
do.
machines. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye
you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.